All right, it is currently 2:32 p.m. and this is impossible light activity that is on my ceiling. So you can see the shadow that's appearing above my head, and I actually have more than one shadow. Let me zoom in some so you can see closer. This is my hand as I'm waving it. And again, I am my camera up so you can see this is my window right here. That's supposedly sunlight that's hitting the ground, by the way. That's the normal trajectory of sunlight. Sunlight isn't bouncing. That's called crossing a path by a demon that's engaged in a sex offense. That's the state keeping me under surveillance. Crossing path in the engineered light, which is what is group stalking, and state surveillance is underway, showing you the maintenance of an engineered environment where the demon possessed. It's not just the fact that I'm showing you the system of group stalking, system of monitoring, the system of federal stalking using communication devices on the video of the internet. I'm also showing you what is demonic. And I want you to recognize what is the system that is engaged in by an entire population. The demon possessed are those that are by the masses. I mean, you have an entity that's maintaining presence systematically through traffic. You have an entity that's maintaining presence by living at the community. They're in an environment that's entirely unnatural. And an example of that is the crossing a path by what you know. This is a demon that's in traffic crossing path. They're group stalking while they're in a vehicle. Registration and identification and information known by the California Department of Motor Vehicles, by the way, a state facilitating venue that's monitoring. In addition to those that are in the state that are group stalking with the state, by the way, and they're doing so in a specific environment, and they are clearly systematically and seamlessly engaging in that criminal system with the government. This is my shadow that's appearing above my head, and that's the recognition of that criminal system. This is impossible light activity. They're not driving in sunlight. They're driving in an engineered environment. You're not walking your dog path with real-time knowledge, by the way. When you've got the scientific impossibility around, you're understanding what is the significance of everything that's occurring in that environment, and that's malice. That's the same demon that was group stalking while LAPD was flying over repeatedly in helicopter, and LAPD is still monitoring right now, and that's a psychopath who is going to federal prison. Apartment number 1802, number 4. Him and his mother are going to federal prison, and then they're going to be deported. Origin is, I believe it's Korea, but they're going back to their place of origin. Their citizenship is not permanent. Upon prosecuted for terrorism in the United States, any citizenship, any naturalization you've been granted, acting with the people of the state, like you see here, he's going to federal prison for the criminal conduct that the people of the state are engaging in with him. This is the engineered light. Driving by, you're not driving by, you're stalking. And you're stalking with the state, and you're also practicing what is demonic. And that's the significance of having a scientifically impossible maintenance of what is engineered light in an environment where the sun is not even going to be present. Let me be clear, it's 2:35 p.m. and this is supposedly sunlight that's appearing here, and then you're understanding what is supposedly sunlight that's appearing here. I want to make sure that you understand this is engineered light. What I'm showing you, what the entity is doing is maintaining a light source over my apartment building for the duration of the day, all day long. That's how I'm able to capture it, for example, at 6:30 in the morning, which no one has forgotten that advice. At 2:35 in the afternoon, there is no iteration of the natural environment where there will ever be any sun over this apartment building, which is exactly what you're witnessing while you're looking at what is supposedly sunlight. You can see the shadow of the vehicle speaking to the zenith presence of the light source right over my apartment building. In addition to that, you're looking at your light on my ceiling. On my ceiling inside of my apartment, which is speaking to the presence of a light source, not the sun. What I'm pointing out also is this engineered light, which is just of a different hue. The entity maintains what is concentrated light that's going to appear magnified in size through these holes, where you also have seen the dynamic light, the leaves on the trees appearing through, magnified on my wall, through what are blinds that are closed, and they appear both at a downward trajectory, which is what you're looking at here. I want you to see this. This is my shadow appearing to the side of me, all right? And this is my shadow appearing above me, all right? And then you're recognizing what is group stalking on on Alvarado Street, which is a state action. It's an ongoing federal offense that the government's engaging in systematically, repeatedly, while they are monitoring everything that I'm speaking to about their criminal act. That impunity is going to be placed on the accounts of all the people of the state that are group stalking on an ongoing basis. Lucy Santos is going to be prosecuted for the impunity that she's engaging in, participating and facilitating group stalking. Every demon-possessed third party that's a terrorist, that's a sex offender, that's engaging in state monitoring with the state, that is the LAPD, is monitoring via every third party that's crossing path. That is a terrorist that's engaging in what is state terrorism, in other words, on behalf of the government, represented through every third party, every vehicle that is crossing path in that specific environment. That's not sunlight that's appearing to my side on my wall. All right, that's the identification of what is criminal conduct of a demonic nature Terrorists are crossing paths in Alvarado. Terrorists are living next door to Alvarado. Terrorists are living on the grounds of the crime scene where I live at Alvarado, where the entity is engaging in terrorism, stalking in helicopters. And the entity is doing so with real-time knowledge that their criminal conduct is continuously documented. There is no differentiation, by the way. There's no distinction. You're looking at layers of engineered light. This is a method of engineered light that's showing my shadow right here. This is still engineered light. You've also seen, like I was pointing out, concentrated, darker color, richer light, which you're supposed to think is that sunlight that's on the concrete. That's all the entities maintaining inside of my apartment, where, by the way, after 7 p.m., you're looking at the light source that's still in alignment to my apartment. The sun is not present. That's the light source. I've already established that. That's what you have the prosecution of a teenager. That is Lucy Santos' son and Hector Aparicio's son that were group stalking yesterday while that light source was over me, while I'm still in alignment I'm on the same property, the same address. They're going to be prosecuted as group stalkers, and all of their parents are going to federal prison for that. What I'm documenting, minor children terrorizing me, and also doing so in the workplace on behalf of the state. That's a threat to your life. A terrorism, let me be clear, a teenager represents the government. They represent the demons that are wearing badges and bearing weapons and kidnapping you and engaging in fictitious prosecutions. That's what that teenager represents. Okay, you're understanding what is the state's criminal pattern of conduct and who the state is acting through and in concert with. That's the significance of the specific environment. There will never be sunlight that's appearing, creating this light activity. This is the shadow of this right here, the rod. You can see it moving. That's not sunlight. This is engineered light. And then it's appearing next to me on the wall over here, which is engineered light. And by the way, you've seen it, dynamic light. Literally, while I speak to the presence of Satan and the demon possessed who are group stalking, you've seen that light moving in action, and you've seen that all over in my room. You've seen them provide, in other words, the demon-possessed Satan himself, provide evidence against themselves, okay? Because they lack self-control, which is the character, the personality defect, by the way, of Satan, which is a spirit who is using people, and they're all going to be prosecuted for the criminal conduct that they're engaging, because you're not exercising any religious right, serving Satan, engaging in what is group stalking. Group stalking is demonic activity. The government's group stalking, the government's going to be prosecuted as a terrorist that it is. Also, what I want you to pay attention to is the entity is providing what is the engineered light, and you don't see any light source. All right, not that the presence of the light source that you typically see right, where's my finger? So you can see, typically you see the light source right here, which is supposedly but it's not. But I want to give you what is the asininity that the demon possessed provide, because there is no explanation for the engineered environment. You have the engineered light that's existing on my ceiling at all times of the day, even when it's outside the living room window, and you're still seeing that same pattern of engineered light on my ceiling. But the entity is in the afternoon aiming engineered light that's on my, and I want to be clear, when I say aiming, let me be more precise, because it's not aiming. I told you the engineered light has nothing to do with the light source. And it's also not the product of the sun. The sun's not going to be present over one address all day. The sun does not create, your shadow above your head does not create this engineered light. Okay, it is the presence of the demonic. It is the evidence, that is, of the demonic and demonic activity. So you are capable of knowing the condition of those that are in that environment. You know very well that that's a demon, and you also know their criminal conduct, and you know who they represent. They represent the state. And by virtue of that, by virtue of both that knowledge and that presence, that's a criminal act that's being perpetrated against you, and they represent the government that doesn't have a constitutional basis to do so. You're subject to what is terrorism, and you prosecute on that basis alone. Whether or not they're looking up at you and smiling and say, God bless you, or whether they're coming and delivering something to you, products that you have requested. You never requested to be subject to state surveillance, okay? Nor can you consent to that. All right. The entity is doing so through the entire population, and the entity is doing so in the absence of that light source. But I want to be clear, it's directly over the apartment building. You already know that, but I want to show you what is the pattern. The engineer light is present. Okay. And the entity was doing this. I took pictures. You'll see the pictures through the closed blinds. The blinds were closed. The light source is not anywhere visible over the sky space. It's directly above me. The entity is engaging what is maintaining that light source. And when I'm showing you and you see the light source at the window, it has nothing to do with the engineer light on the ceiling. The light source is a method of identifying the crime scene of federal group stalking and monitoring the presence of the population, those whom Satan are using to engage in what is obsessive group stalking conduct. And it is also speaking to literally the presence of Satan. It's the demonic imitation of the natural environment. And by the way, Satan is nothing other than a counterfeit. He wants to be God. He is not God. He is not the equal opposite of God. He's a created being. He's a spirit, and he uses people. All right. And this is a demonic imitation of the natural environment. The sun is not a stationary object that will remain over me, because that's exactly what the P.O.C. shows you. The presence of the light source, which is not the sun, is over me all day long. Covering up the light source for the first half of the day and then showing at the second half of the day, well, the evidence is such that I've already captured it at the beginning of the day. Here at the same address. In addition, I've already captured the light source remaining over me for the duration of the day in a totally different region. There is No way out of the P.O.C. The entity is showing what is ongoing malice and impunity. And all you have to do is pay attention to the environment. This is impossible light activity. Okay. And it's appearing at a trajectory horizontal to the window. And then you're looking at what is engineered light that's appearing above my head. This is speaking to what is demonic. And while you're subject to what is a terrorizing environment, it is the evidence of what is state action. And why is that? Because the government is stalking you, as I've documented, the hallmark of stalking in helicopters, police vehicles, fire trucks, and ambulances. They are ceaselessly using sirens, the indication of state presence. And they do so on an ongoing basis. So heavily that I started documenting it, and it is the hallmark of group stalking in the specific environment. The entity is stalking in helicopters so heavily, and that's how you are connecting the two. The specific environment does not only consist of the engineered light, the light source, which also, by the way, engineered light is present day and night. That's how I have a gang of shadows around me while I'm walking outside. Okay, the moonlight doesn't create 8 shadows around you. Street lamps do not create 8 shadows around you. That's engineered light. And it's a demonic environment. It defies nature. Okay. And the evidence of that which defies nature is equally evident. Okay. Of the criminal act, which is of the demonic. It is evidence. Pure evidence. So I want to make sure that you understand that establishing the pattern of conduct is not only through the specific environment that you establish, but which is unnatural. It's a scientific impossibility. It's inexplicable by NASA, in other words. And there's no scientific evidence. There's no expert that will get on the stand and explain to you how sunlight is shooting horizontally on this wall, creating multiple shadows, and also then appearing above my head, and this way creating multiple shadows. Okay. There's no scientific evidence that will establish that as consistent or a natural occurrence, or in any way coexisting with what is the sun that would be over Florida at 5:44 p.m. at any point today, not just right now at 5:44 p.m. There's no sunlight that's going to be a product of this. But the entity's stalking behavior, in other words, engaging in what is harassment, engaging in what is surveillance, engaging in what is stalking, following me in the specific environment is the P.O.C. And that's exactly what the pattern is, the pattern of conduct. Now, the P.O.C., as I'm referencing my body of evidence, establishing and exposing public corruption in the state of California, which is occurring in the United States. California is not the only entity that's group stalking. Okay. And you know that because of the entity's purpose to hide itself in plain sight in the natural environment. And all you have to do is pay attention, and it stands out like a sore thumb. None of this is natural. None of it is normal. Neither is their behavior. You're not walking your dog. You are a delusional psychopath who's group stalking someone that's aware of it in plain sight. And you go to federal prison for years for doing that. All right. That's apartment number 1802, number 4. And they're acting on behalf of an entity. The entity is engaged in ongoing state surveillance by driving in Alvarado. It's repeatedly crossing paths. The entity is group stalking in helicopter, just like you see Lucy Santos acting in concert with LAPD, who's hovering in relevant position over the property. Covering up the light source is the same presence of the light source. It remains over me all day long. The engineered environment where you're seeing the light source is remaining over me from rising until set, the same demonic capability to cover up that light source, which remains in the same position over me, and then showing it at a latter point in the day is equally demonic exercise over the environment. Okay. So in other words, it's not the non-existence of the unnatural environment because the light source is covered up, nor does that logically follow. The ability to capture the phenomenon of what is the sun that will be at one address for the duration of the day. Okay, it logically follows that demonic is also clearly capable of refraining from, revealing or unveiling that light source, which is still remaining in an unfathomable way, in an inexplicable way, in an unnatural way. Okay, in order for purposes of what is avoiding documentation, but you can't avoid the P.O.C. There's no getting out of the P.O.C. That's the point of a pattern. The demon possessed are stuck in a pattern because these demons do the same thing over and over again, and there's no way to get out of that. And that's what the demon possessed seek to do. That's prosecuted as malice. That's prosecuted as what is an unlawful obsession by a government that's keeping you under surveillance. They're showing an ongoing and unlawful intent to obstruct justice and continue stalking you, which, by the way, is the compulsion of the demon possessed, which poses a public safety concern. This will never be the product of sunlight. I'm on the 3rd floor of my apartment. The sun is never going to be over the same address where I've captured the sunrise, nor would it be, as I showed you on May 30th at 9 o'clock in the morning while I'm standing in front of my leasing office at 1810 North Alvarado Street, which is just downstairs. Would there be any iteration of the natural environment creating this light or this light to my side of my wall and the sun that would ever be in any position to be over me or create any light activity on the property? The sun would be gone already. It's in constant motion. It's not remaining over Erica Lorraine Spencer. The demon possessed are maintaining presence all around me, group stalking me in a demonic environment. That's what that is. And it is revealing what is terrorism that's underway in California. America's version of terrorism is such that, unfortunately, many of American citizens are serving Satan. And this is what is the system that is underway that Satan is using a government, Satan is using a people to engage in what shall be criminalized, and it's group stalking, and it's operated by a government, a state. Those are demons flying helicopters, as I've shown, the demons that are stalking, group stalking in courthouses, with sheriff's departments, and the people of the state that are in that community amongst that population engaging in that same criminal system, okay? This has nothing to do with sunlight. It's in the depths of the apartment. I'm standing away from the window. You're understanding what is engineered light, okay? That's appearing. Engineer light. And I want to make sure that you understand the significance of what is prosecution for federal group stalking and monitoring. Presence in the environment is not accidental or coincidental or ignorant. The people of the state demonstrate ongoing concerted conduct with that entity that's stalking you directly. They show ongoing concerted activity in that engineered environment. The significance of their concerted presence for purposes of what is revealing their movement, their presence in that engineered environment. That's how you're understanding what is ambush conduct, what is concerted conduct, what is, in other words, a system. They're group stalking together. And when it's happening inside of the private space, it's a sex offense. When you're looking at this engineer light, a government's going to be prosecuted for a sex offense. And everybody living, like I said, every single last one of them living on Alvarado Gardens are going to be prosecuted as group stalkers. Group stalking is an exceedingly violent sex offense of the highest degree to be recognized under federal law, and it is committed by a government. And it is something that you will never want on your criminal record, and you have a whole population, including those under the age of majority, that are going to be prosecuted for it. It is currently 2:48 p.m., and this is the absence of the light source. The entity engages in the exact same light activity when you see the light source over my window, which the entity does at approximately 3 to 3:30, and then remaining until the sun set in alignment with me after 7 p.m. Okay, that's the pattern of conduct. This is P.O.C.